السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the third session of Reimagining Economics, a transdisciplinary approach. So today we are going to have our third session. Let's begin our session, inshallah, with Surah Al-Fatiha. May Allah bless the session and maybe benefit a lot from it, and inshallah. So over to our instructors for today's lesson.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Welcome everyone. This is our second module. Actually, it's a third meeting of ours, but it's a second module because the last week we met, we only discussed your Ramadan assignments. And Alhamdulillah, I mean, it was. I find it very productive and refreshing. We looked at, we studied the Quran from these practical perspectives in different areas relating to economics. And so we continue with our modules, and today's module is on limitations in Islamic economics and finance. Before I start, last week during this week actually, I asked all the course participants to go through the materials, to watch the videos by Sheikh Jasser, and also read the book. And also I asked to think about some limitations that you personally can identify in various sources that are related to economics and finance. I did share some a link to a folder with materials on economics and finance, and actually it is completely up to you to what kind of materials you use. But this session we envision that we will discuss some of these limitations and why it is important. So I'll just start the ball rolling in terms of just presenting a few ideas that I have in terms of these limitations. But even before we talk about limitations, I think there's a need to really talk about the where does it come from? What this kind of limitations, where do they originate? And these challenges, these problems and limitations, they arise in scholarship and also in just normal relations between the people. And of course, they do have some place where they originate, and this is what I will just talk about briefly. But I will start also with the basic premise that the diversity is a sunnah ilahiyya. So it's a divine law. It's a sunnah ilahiyya. So all creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is special and it's different. Everyone and everything is different from one another, even within the same species. And we are different in many ways, all the way down to the DNA and to our fingerprints and to our thoughts. We're different in our actions, also in our understanding and in our abilities to learn. And so, therefore, what we're going to discuss today is not criticism of any one school of thought or any scholar, It's an exercise in reflection on issues that contemporary Islamic economics and finance is facing. So diversity is what we call Sunnah Ilahiyya. So we will talk about it, I guess, more in other modules when we talk about the methodology. And so the physical diversity is connected to differences of opinion among human beings in general, and of course among the scholars as well. So, and people leave their mark in this life, affecting others and the environment in many different ways. And so differences are a normal part of life. They're a normal part of the civilizational development. And so this is my first premise. And from this premise, the premise of diversity, we can deduce that economic thinking and our explanation of economic phenomena are also going to be different, and they will vary greatly depending on time and space, and also associated worldviews. So I want to underline here the significance of context and the worldviews. And also to establish justice and balance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the ayats in the form of the books, the revelation. And he reveals them through the messengers. And also he reveals the ayats in nature for us, for people to reflect, to understand, and to act in a certain manner. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his divine mercy, he guides people to what is good and warns about some consequences of not following the guidance. And so this is the basic understanding of Sunan Ilahi as universal laws. And the discovery of these universal laws are left to us through observing and thinking about the ayats or the signs of Allah in nature, in society, and within ourselves. And this is where some scholars mention several types of divine books. So number one, of course, is the divine scriptures. So all the divine scriptures, including the last and the last one, the Quran al-Karim. But beside that, the ayats or the divine books, some scholars include in that is the book of nature, for example, Kitab al-Kawn, and also the book of humans, or the Insan, Kitab al-Insan. And so to arrive at correct meanings of in these books, to arrive at correct meanings in the world around us, we need to read these books in combination with each other. And so, like the Book of Allah, the Kitab Allah, and also Kitab al-Kawn. So this should be read in combination with each other. So divine scriptures are important as a guide to understanding other books. So Kitab al-Kawn and Kitab al-Insan. And to obtain meaning about the world around us and our societies, we can use observation and human experience. But unfortunately, and we see this in the development of science, that observation and human experience and empiricism they're not sufficient. And of course, the human history is the proof of that, because we do make a lot of mistakes due to natural human weaknesses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, ayah 28, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يريد الله أن يخفف عنكم وخلق الإنسان ضعيفا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make it easy for you, but the humans are made weak. And so what is that? In what sense are we different, and in what sense are we weak? So in this ayah, and of course many similar ayats, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allude to human, these ayahs, they allude to human weakness in terms of, sexual weakness or bodily urges, and some other physical needs that we need to fulfill. And so the revealed guidance serves as a means to lighten our burdens and to remove whatever conflict we may have between the nafs, or the urges, the wants, and also the ruh, or the spirit. And in Surah Yasin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. And in Muhammad Asad's translation, he says, limitless in his glory is he who has created opposites, or in other translations, pairs, in whatever the earth produces and in themselves, and in that which they have no knowledge. And this ayah also refers to another sunnah ilahiyah, the creation of opposites, or the pairs. This is easily observable, and it's a basic knowledge that we learn from schools. But what is interesting about this ayah is that the opposites are not only in what is obvious, like male and female, positive and negative, black and white, night and day, good and bad. But there are other opposites, which are not immediately obvious. And I think it refers to a range of opposites between extremes. So we have certain extremes, like the range between like black and white, and there are many. There is a range between the two. And if you think of a scale between the two extremes, for example, if you have a questionnaire, you run a survey, and you range your answers between 1 and 10. And so within that range, 1 and 10 are opposites, just like the 2 and 9 are opposites, and 3 and 8 are opposites, and so on. And so there is a range of pairs of opposites. And so this is where we can, I think we should talk about the human bias. And so let me just share this screen here. Let me see where's, okay. So we talked about critical approach. So the different approaches in Maqasid studies, and we talked about critical orientation, comprehensive, and critical. And so this is where ijtihad or the scholarship itself and research, they grow through this critical approach. And Islamic scholarship, especially including in the Islamic the economics and finance, they need continuous evaluation and improvement. So this is where we refer to ijtihad. And at the same time, we need to recognize the cognitive capacities. Each one of us will have this biases and shortcuts that we employ. And these can hinder, this either can help us or they can hinder us in sound Islamic financial practices. And so understanding these limitations, of course, it's very, very important. Now I want to just touch something that all of us have, and I'm not referring to Daniel Kahneman as maybe as a Muslim scholar, but something to think about, really. And I just from our own observation about our own selves, we see that sometimes we make very quick decisions, and I would really, I would suggest that you read this interesting book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And then in that, he talks about biases and systems of thinking. And he says that we have like two systems of thinking. One is fast and intuitive, but it is prone to biases. Of course, it is needed when you really need to make really fast decision where there is a decision of life and death. But then there is another type of thinking which is slow and deliberate. And this is where we need to, whenever we have something, some complex issue, complex problem that we need to solve, we really need to think deeply about it in order to find some solution. And so we can think that the IEF scholarship needs to develop and encourage this kind of deliberate and deep thinking. But it's not just thinking in and of itself, but it must be based on certain methodology that we will talk about in next modules, module 3 and 4 and so on. And we see that the Quran really emphasizes deep thinking and reflection. And you'll find a lot of references to tafakkur and tadabbur and ta'aqqul and so on. And also the Quran discourages blind following without critical review. And I'm sure you have also watched it in the video that we shared by Sheikh Jasser, and also in the book. So there are many examples in the Book of Allah that really talk about why you shouldn't be just blindly following your forefathers. And there are many ayats about that. And so maqasid al-Sharia, or the maqasid al-Quran, or maqasid thinking, it is something that we talk about, and this is one of the ways that we talk about promoting benefits and preventing harms. So whenever you'll see jalb al-masalih wa dar al-mafasid, so that's about the benefits and harms, the good and the bad, how to promote one and how to prevent the other. And of course, when we talk about benefits, we also talk about justice and human well-being and social welfare. And so this maqasidi thinking, it provides a certain framework for thinking, for evaluating the practices, evaluating the theories. And just as a very small, maybe a small example, and I would even argue that the Ibn Ashur's view is, it is to a certain extent, it's very traditional. But even in that, I mean, he expands the idea of maqasid, and he really looks at various applications of maqasid al-Sharia, and especially in relation to economic transactions, and also the employee-employer relations as well. And so when he talks about the wealth, economic wealth, he says that the maqasid in relation to wealth is the circulation of wealth. So this is where we'll find a lot of references in the Quran about the spending. In fact, and transparency and preservation, durability and equity. So I would really also encourage to read the book by Ibn Ashur. I mean, translation, at least the translation. Treatise on Maqasid al-Sharia, I think, published by IIIT. So very good exposition of the whole idea of Maqasid al-Sharia. I mean, contextually, it was written in the beginning of the 20th century, but at least some of those ideas, of course, are good. And it is written from the traditional perspective. And limitations, again, this is just very limited, so limited view on limitations, is that the number one is the taqlid. This is something that is really hampers or hinders the development of thought. And it refers to over-reliance on past rulings without independent reasoning. So, ijtihad is there. It's the doors of ijtihad has never been closed. And as also Ibn Ashur mentions in his book, is that there is no door in ijtihad to be closed in the first place. So it has always been open, but then the problems in thought, the problems in the political problems, and the existence of these schools of thought, they really hinder the ijtihad itself. I mean, we see that ijtihad within the schools of thought, it continued, but then the broader ijtihad, it was kind of closed, or at least diminished greatly. And so ijtihad is needed for innovation. It is needed for to look at to address contemporary challenges. And so it limits our understanding of the present economic reality and response strategies. And so imitation in Maqasid al-Sharia studies and applications, it leads to the continuation of status quo in banking and finance, and to stifle ijtihad as well. And later on, or maybe even right now, I can present one idea. Actually, this is something I critiqued in my dissertation. This is a book on Maqasid al-Sharia in Islamic finance. Of course, I don't want to say that anything negative. It is a work of a scholar, of a very active scholar, but this is the type of thinking that is present today, that you can write works, you can write books using the Maqasid al-Sharia, actually with the purpose of defending the existing status quo. All right, so you know, the existing Islamic banking practices, and there are many books published, and one of the books is this, the Maqasid al-Sharia in Islamic finance, published by IBFIN. I think you should take a look at it. The author is Acheni al-Assasna, Dr. Hassan. Well, Dr. Hassan is a well-known scholar, and I'm not critiquing him. It is the approach, it is the methodology that he's using. It is published by IBFIN in Kuala Lumpur in 2013. So this is just one of the examples, and there are, of course, many more. Then the next one is partialism. Tajdi, it's focusing on isolated aspects of Islamic texts without considering the bigger picture. Well, when we look at the literature in Islamic economics and finance, and actually, if you could see around me, I have the whole desk around me is just covered with all the books and references. And they actually, we can classify them into this. So number one is the textbooks. All right, so textbooks, they are for the general readership at the lower level, at the maybe undergraduate level. And then another categorization, I would say, the books that are philosophical in nature. They deal with worldviews. They deal with some philosophical aspects, philosophy of science, philosophy of economics, and they can be part of those textbooks as well. And usually, the first part of those textbooks, first two chapters, you'll see they talk about the philosophy. And then the third one is the application, the application, or even before that, we'll see we have another category, the usage of fiqh or fiqh muamalat, the writings on fiqh muamalat. So this is traditional approach. So we can just have these four categories of literature. Maybe you can add, or you can debate about that. So in my opinion, there are at the very lower level, at the very basic level, it's the textbooks. Then there is also within textbooks, there are the philosophical kind of worldview based, and then the writings on fiqh, fiqh muamalat from the traditional perspective, from the taqlidi perspective, and also the application of fiqh muamalat ideas, or some of the ideas to Islamic economic thinking, and most of them are in the field of banking and finance. So I would even argue that the majority of papers today written in Islamic economics and finance, they are related. I mean, in economics, they are related to Islamic banking and finance. And so partialism is one of those problems that can really contradict the objectives of the revelation. And apologism is adopting the paradigms and institutions and their objectives and concepts and values that are contrary to Islam. And in that categorization that I talked about, the fourth category, the applied literature, in Islamic banking and finance, you'll see a lot of this apologism. And this is where you'll see the whole system is accepted, adopted like wholesale, and even to the extent that um, all the financial institutions and markets and players, they are just recreated in the Islamic financial system. So it's just complete imitation in that. And they use a lot of this tabrir and the arguments on the apologetic arguments in the sense that you need to survive in this financial system, in this contemporary system, and in order to survive, you need to imitate to a certain extent, but still use the Sharia compliant instruments. And so this kind of apologism, again, it hinders the self-reflection and continuous improvement of Islamic economics and finance. And contradiction, again, there is a lot of disagreement. It's still going on, and it will continue going on. And even to the extent that some of these contradictions or the disagreements between scholars, it can even affect the whole markets. Like if some of you may remember in 2008 or 2009, Sheikh Taqi Usmani's idea that the sukuk, they do not follow the Sharia, and the buying and selling just diminished, or I wouldn't say stopped completely, but it suddenly dropped. I mean, the sales of sukuk, the market was really negatively affected by this one statement from the scholar. So these are contradictions. Of course, they will continue they will continue be present, and the basis of this contradiction again is the foundation. Where do the scholars, these scholars, where do they base their thinking on? I mean, what do they base their thinking on? So it can be traditional knowledge, it can be just narrow madhabi knowledge, and so on. So, but in the market, it can create confusions. It can create uncertainty. So for investors and practitioners. And so this is where I would argue that we need a greater collaboration between various types of scholarship. So it's not only within fiqh muamalat area, and not only between the specialists in fiqh muamalat and the finance, banking and finance, but we need people in, let's say, even scholars in philosophy, in maybe in IT, in sociology, also to be present in some of these discussions. And so these are, and deconstructionism, the last one. Deconstructionism, it's excessive focus on technical aspects of financial transactions, So again, this is where you'll see a lot of problems in certain jurisdictions where, let's say in Malaysia, they used to use bithamenajil, and which is basically be'ina, which was clearly prohibited by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And other this legal tricks, حيلة شرعية. I mean, you can find a lot of them in contemporary Islamic banking and finance instruments. And so there are, and this can overshadow the broader ethical principles. So because you put the maqsad of imitating the conventional system and competing with the conventional system, then you have to use the approaches and the instruments that have similar economic effects in the economies, in states and economies. And so these things really overshadow the overall the ethical principle, overall the outlook of the Quranic approach and Quranic worldview. And so this is where we need to be able to integrate the Maqasid al-Sharia principles, or the Maqasidi principles that we will talk about, with the development, within the development and evaluation of Islamic financial products, and also the discipline of economics, or the study of economic phenomena as a whole. And so these are just a few remarks that I have on these limitations. But I just want to restate that where does it come from? It comes from the diversity of opinions, diversity of between us people, and also the issue of these biases and prejudices, and the system one thinking, if we use Daniel Kahneman's language in his book. And so this is where we have the need to have a broader outlook into these issues, the issues of economic phenomena. And this is why we thought about the transdisciplinary view of this whole of this whole discipline, transdisciplinary view of the economic phenomena. And so I would really love maybe Dr. Zaid to add a few points on maybe on limitations, or maybe on some some of the case study, or maybe examples, and then we'll have a general discussion, because we need to have some understanding of what you understand from this and what you think. All right, so Dr. Zaid, please. Unmute, please. Dr. Zaid, unmute.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Udus. Thank you for your presentation. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. If you would like, we can go to slide 5 that talks about limitation. So this is just few quick comments, just meant to help us all brainstorm, because we really want in this, our objective in this presentation today is to really seek your own experiences and critical conversation about do you agree with these limitations? Are they fictional, or are they actually real? Have you observed them, or do you think they are not even an issue? This is very important, because what we're trying to do also in this course is that we try to establish kind of a ground, a foundation for all of us to communicate and to analyze, to critique what we see around us in this world. Okay, so I do see a hand up. So if it is a quick comment, we can definitely hear you out, Sister Muniza. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for comments. I can wait until later.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna give quick observations on these limitations, and then inshallah, I would definitely I would seek for your to jot down your thoughts as you hear them out. So here, we'll talk about limitations. And sorry, the first one is which is taqleed. I mean, yes, we need to spend a little bit of time maybe to understand what do we understand by the word taqleed. Generally speaking, we're talking about uh, legal rulings that has been passed down, and these are legal precedents. It is not. It is natural for legal systems to have taqleed, excuse me, and depart from taqleed when there is a new precedent or new circumstances that leads to the need to change a ruling. You see that in the common system of law and other systems of law. But here there is a problem when we think that we cannot change any rulings from previous generations and going back to 1,000 years behind. So is this really, who is really just stick with taqleed? I mean, is it taqleed in ibadat versus muamalat in matters of worship? But even in matters of worship, there's a lot of new thinking. There's a lot of new thinking. For example, when we do Hajj, how do we do zakat, and all of them, because at Hajj there are a lot of times when life is at risk because of overcrowding in certain sha'a'ir. And then there was relaxation of these rulings, despite maybe some clear hadith or instructions, because it's understood as the overall what is in the best interest of the Muslim Ummah. In terms of zakah, there's always the debate of should we pay zakah in kind or in money and means. So there is always imitation versus thinking about what is really fulfills the higher purposes and objectives of the Sharia. Right now, from my observations in the Fatwa Council that I am part of and I attended, and the Islamic rulings academies that I attend, that is what we basically can term as selective ijtihad. So selective ijtihad is that you look at, we're striving and working very hard to find a historical opinion and pick among these historical opinions. And we're doing that in a manner that transcends the madahib. And when you say madahib, not only just the four, sometimes we go all the way to including the Ibadi and some other opinions of the old and non-practiced madahib as of now, as like Sufyan al-Thawri and other ones. So we actually try to go and do selective ijtihad. But the interesting thing is that we always want to find somebody who said that opinion from a long time ago. So likely the criteria it was set 200 years ago, then all right, it's good. Then that's the only way we can come up with a new opinion. So make an opinion today and wait 200 years, and maybe somebody will pick it up as, oh, this is in the tradition, and becomes part of the tradition, but cannot be contemporary opinion. Examples again of this imitation and taqleed, and then the need of wider thinking. As for example, often we see some people quoting the one Hanafi position on dealing with riba in jurisdictions outside of Muslim or Islamic ruling or Muslim rule. And some people take that as a taqleed to justify riba transactions in the communities that many of us who live in the West, and others debated obviously, and then there's a whole other range of Hanafi school rulings on this matter. But I'm just using it as sometimes when you say pure taqleed or And then even this taqlid within even each one of these schools of jurisprudence, they have a wide range of opinions. So sometimes taqlid ends up being really selecting from a long list of opinions, and these opinions ran the gamut. I mean, it is literally, there's almost in every fiqh opinion I've studied, there's always a debate in every fiqh opinion. Again, outdated language. There is incredible challenge when we deal with taqlid is that the language that literally the fuqaha use is incredibly historical. And that's one major challenge when economists and finance people talk to fuqaha. They have their own language that is literally from centuries ago. And the examples that are brought is always, I mean, one example is that, there's always this, the example of the bull and the clay oven. Who has who is responsibility for the destruction, and how much is compensation, and so on and so forth. And this is actually a problem that comes up all the time as an example of property rights and all that stuff. So it's more the issue of the fulus. Fulus, this is bronze currency that was used. It's very interesting. Also debate about it. So it's just, but it is always it's just interesting how the language and the example. There's nothing. It's not a problem that could bring an example, but sometimes just really that's the only example that we seems to be limited to. If we go quickly to the second problem, the partialism and tajzid. I think recently we were discussing in one of the groups is that the hadith on pricing. And that can be, again, a big challenge where it is, what is the bigger context, especially with hadith. You always need to know what is the bigger context here, why this price controls were not allowed, what happened, what was the circumstance, what was the economic situation in the Medina, who is practicing this price control, how is it affecting overall the economy of the Medina. The tawarruq contract is again another example of when you just really take a ruling and just apply it in a specific way. There is this issue of property rights versus community solidarity rights. We feel a lot that when we think, oh, that is property rights are sacred in Islam, and I've seen people advocating that really they're economic or political libertarian. They come from that libertarian point of view, and all they focus is on property rights. And then, so what about the community solidarity right that are clearly stated throughout the Quran Kareem and the Hadith? What about the right to access essential resources within this general property right discussion? We know that the famous tradition about the water, fire, and pasture. What does that fit, and what does that mean in our day and time? What about the right to leave no one hungry or destitute? Starting with your neighbor. If you have a neighbor who's hungry and destitute, the Prophet ﷺ said that if you have any access of food, of transportation, of means of production, then share it with others. If you look at that, it seems that this is a very powerful argument that counters this argument of pure property rights. And if you go to the next one, apologism. But here there is a challenge. So people look at من له فضل زاد فليعد به على من لا زاد. Anybody who has any excess resources, he should share it with others, and then use that to apologize and say like, oh, here is Islam is pro-socialism. And some major scholars in our life wrote about Islam wal-ishtirakiyya, Islam and socialism, while others focus on the property right and say, oh, Islam and Ra'asmaliya, Islam and capitalism. And that's always, this is apologism that we talk about. And this is, again, where you see it like in justifying of modern contracts. Now, I need to emphasize that one of the worst forms of apologism that is happening now is the use of maqasid al-sharia to apologize for almost anything and everything. So anybody is the easiest way for people right now to write a paper justifying whatever issue based on maqasid al-sharia. So it is one of the most abused concepts. And of course, we can have a debate. Like, so what we're saying, so one of the things that we're trying to do at the Maqasid Institute, that when we need, we definitely think that Maqasid is an important tool to bring about tajdeed and islah, renewal and reform. But it needs this framework, this theoretical or methodological framework that we are presenting here to prevent the abuse of the Maqasid Sharia, including the 5 limitations that we are discussing here. The next one, so tanaqud, and that's again back to some of the point that was mentioned earlier. There's almost in every single fiqhi opinion I see opposite points of view all the time. Yeah, and then like if you take the cryptocurrency debate, and you read the opinion of the opinions that justify the cryptocurrencies, and then with no limitations, and others, because it just deals with it as a legal question. Is this basic contract in the way it is just presented? Is this technically right? And this is going to, connect with the next limitation, which is tajzeed. So when economic, financial, or social issues are presented in very narrow technical terms, we get these quick fatwas that says, yes, technically this is a halal contract. And I find other people who are like even the rulings in the International Union of Muslim Scholars and by major scholars, and which I had a debate with, is that they are like, what is it prohibited? Well, it's prohibited not for its own sake. It is prohibited because of its consequences. It's ma'anat. It's a people being bamboozled and people being tricked out of their money, and then we know so many people who lost their money because of this. So, but why don't you make that clear? You're prohibiting something because some people are abusing it. Or I say my argument with them, like, the reason that you're bringing to say that cryptocurrencies are prohibited are actually not a valid reasons, and the reason that you and the people that will justify cryptocurrencies are also not good reasons, because of almost, you can see all these 5 limitation elements in it. And it was very interesting that a major scholar like Taqi Osmani was mentioned here, because alhamdulillah, I was part again with one of our old colleagues from IIUM, who is a principal contributor to a major revision to fiqhi opinions that he is embarked on. And then again, that's the challenge. Like, they're trying to go beyond Hanafi opinions, and then and I find that very challenging. But it's definitely, there is sincere effort in revising what is being done right now, and there's a sincere effort to say that there are definitely major challenges. If we go final quick comment on the deconstructionism and tafkik. So this is one example here, is that we seem to talk about capital markets all the time and financial markets, because this is where the money is. This is where people with money have interest in discussing and finding rulings, and mostly, to allow them to do what they want to do. What about the labor market? What about rulings on hiring and firing, whether in the Gulf countries or any other countries where labor is massively being abused, countries with massive number of refugees, and they're being exploited just because following market rules. So there is this deconstructionism. We talk about capital and financial markets, in this connection with labor markets, with natural resources, and the environment, and so on and so forth, because it is convenient. When we break it apart, then we can reach easier opinions. Sorry, that supports the powers, with the special interest group, in my opinion. So these are just quick examples. I mean, if I add one more to this limitation, is that really there is just the realism is not properly present in our work. Realism here is that how practical this approach given the society we live in. What are the characteristics of the society that we live in? Sometimes we just assume that when we deal with economics and finance, we make assumptions of people who are they are all hardworking. They don't take any bribes. They are, honest, and so on and so forth. And that is just incredibly simplistic and unrealistic, because we know firsthand that many of our communities and societies suffer from massive, exploitations and corruptions that prevent this attitude. And the other one is that, in one recent paper I reviewed, I mean, it was about circular economy, and the issue is that I mean, zero everything, zero default, zero, all the issue that is not a realistic assumption. On another paper where it says like, well, a cooperative community applying Islamic principles definitely have much higher rate of return on its investment than anything else. And because of that one assumption, every like an unrealistic state of economy results. And they said, like, this is not realistic. We need, sometime to have fiqh waqi'i or fiqh al-waqi', the realistic fiqh. And here fiqh means deep understanding, as well as practical fiqh or realistic fiqh, that to address our issues. Wallahu alam. Jazakumullah khair.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Zaid. So now I guess we have 1 hour to discuss this, more than 1 hour. So it is an open open flow, open discussion. Actually, I do have some questions at the end, but then I think we should give the floor to our participants and see if you have any comments or any questions, or maybe you agree or disagree with any of these limitations. So please. Yes, Mr. Muniza, please go ahead.
I understand what you're saying regarding building consensus, and I think that is very valuable, and the examples that you've given around Sukuk and the rest are very valid. But I do worry that in the effort of building consensus, what happens in our community is that there is lack of diversity of thought. And if anybody does try to put an opinion that is not popular or established as being correct in historical terms, they get quite quickly shouted down. And I worry that if consensus building means that we're going to shout down the opposing voices and stifle thought, which I think it's fair to say does happen and has happened in our communities for numerous years, then we're going to end up in a position where we are stale, and where we are basically hemorrhaging our thought and our brain power to other economies where they are able to think, and they are given the luxury of being able to think their own way. So that's my only concern about this thing. The other thing that came to mind is when reference was made to historical language. And I think that's something that needs to be explored. I do think that sometimes when we refer to principles that do not, they are embedded in Arabic language and in Quranic language, but do they really apply to today's society? And I think that that's something that we need to explore. But again, there is a sense of fear of talking about these issues because they're not popular.
Really, thank you very much, Sister Maniza. These are definitely valid points, and there is a lot of there may be some backlash in the communities, and this is where we talk about the methodology, and this is a like philosophical level that we speak on. Of course, when the exponents or the scholars they go into details of this, then this is where a lot of differences arise. But what may be a uniting factor is the book of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right. So all of us, we, all Muslim either sects or madahib or schools of thought, all of them refer, or at least they in word they accept the Quran as being the primary resource. Even though some of them, what they do is they believe in this naskh, the idea of abrogation, and also the ideas that the Sunnah is at the same kind of at the same level as the Quran, which in my view is erroneous. So we have the Quran is as the main uniting factor and a guide for all the Muslims. And on the point of language, I would agree with Prof. Jasser in the sense that the Quranic language carries authority, and it carries meaning and deep meaning. And this is where we are invited as Muslims to really think and reflect deeply upon the ayats. Is it possible to translate it into a modern language? I think it is. It is possible, and it is just that the translation of the let's say translations of the Quran, they are also based on certain principles or certain translation methodologies, and some methodologies could be some translation. The translators could use the old tafsirs, the tafsir of Ibn Kathir or Tabari, and so in their translation they would use this tafsir, and so this is where some misunderstanding or some problems with the with taqlid could arise. But if you look at some other translations, like I would prefer Muhammad Asad's translation, for example, into English, and also in Turkish. There is another tafsir scholar who has done his own translation, where they use the another methodology. And they look at the internal structure, they look at the whole language, and so on. I mean, this is some of these translations may not be mainstream, but I think we should be using some of them more. Dr. Zaid, do you want to add anything?
I wanted to quickly respond to, I try my best, just please, to give you quick answers, and then we can expand later. I wanted to refer to Dr. Mir Osman's question about the hadith. Yes, the hadith was one of the biggest challenges with hadith, is that partialism happened in hadith because many of the hadith scholars, they take different parts of the hadith and present it as to support a specific point. So one challenge to improve our understanding of al-hadith is to consider all the different riwayat, all the different narrations of the same hadith with all the different extra bits and pieces that comes either before that specific hadith is mentioned or after it. So one book that does a good job in this regard is a book called Ma'alim al-Sunnah for Sheikh Salihi, Salih Shami. Yeah, so it is in Arabic, and we're trying to also translate it into English. I haven't done that yet, but that is one thing, because when you look at, like, for example, Sahih al-Bukhari, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rahimahu ta'ala, is that it is mainly a book of fiqh. He has fiqh topics, and he's giving you the bits and pieces of the hadith that support that fiqh question or issue. So that's a quick answer. This is one major challenge to this, and we are trying to address that in Maqasid Institute, and we have a class, a course that is on Maqasid approach to Ilm al-Hadith, the Maqasid approach to the Hadith science. The course is in Arabic. We are trying to find a sponsor for it to become in English. But it is there. It's an effort that we are pushing, and we have a group that deals with this issue. So that's quickly. One other question that was raised is about the taqleed and examples of taqleed in contemporary, taking back to contemporary issues. I mean, there's definitely a lot of examples. This is what came to my mind today. There was a major issue with the zakat calculation, for example. The zakat calculation, when it comes just only on agricultural products, and that was an issue came from Malaysia. Malaysia is a major rubber producer, but some scholars said, well, rubber is not mentioned among the kinds of that requires zakat. Zakat is only on really properly food items, but not on rubber plantation that goes into, it's not exactly food, it's going to go into manufacturing processes. And some people just would go with that, I mean, because of this specific taqleed. Another major area that might resonate with some of you, especially, I know there are investors here, and we are in an incredibly challenging time, and when you talk about zakat on corporations, because what do you compare it to? Do you compare it to tijara, merchant, and then you just look at inventory at the end of the year? Well, most of the companies now, they do not have any inventory. It's a service. It's a software. You buy the software, and then, so how do you then maybe on the income that goes, but the income by the time it is taxed and it is spent left and right, barely anything left, and many corporations are actually already in debt, and the people receiving the income are already in debt, or they just spend most of it. So by the time you really end up with barely nothing. And even when it comes to these corporations, I know there are 2.5% zakat, 5% to 10% zakat based on different taqleed. So the whole thing is we're trying to find something, a fatwa before, and to try to follow it. There's no an effort to what is happening here holistically, what is going on here, and what is really the maqsad of the Sharia in this example. So what is goodwill? How do you, is it the market value that you're basing your zakat? And this is actually how many people value zakat, is based on the overall market value. But the market value has non-fungible or non-tangible aspects to it, which is just goodwill towards that corporations and how much that is valued at. So this is very quick examples of challenges that we try to follow. So we are going to tax or calculate zakat on corporation based on rain irrigated land. So because if it is rain irrigated land, then you pay 10% on the zakat, and the zakat is supposed to be at the day of harvest, after you take a little bit of the harvest for your own personal need. So here you see that the zakat is on immediate excess income. not exactly wealth at the end of the year. Some other people said, no, let's calculate it at 5% based on, river irrigated, agricultural land. And you can see that we are really working very hard to find some kind of qiyas, comparison between these two vastly different forms of assets and productive, productive forms of wealth. Just a quick examples for you, because I wanted to keep it quiet and keep it short so that we can hear more of your thoughts on these issues. Jazakallah.
Jelani, Jelani, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, I think just a couple of quick comments. I think Sister Maniza made a very good point about people often get shot down very quickly if they say something which is new or slightly controversial. I think, there are pros and cons with the Western, plurality. It's good to let people express views. It can be harmful in some cases, but on the whole, I agree with her. We shouldn't shut it down so quickly. But I think it's probably I don't think this is a new problem. If you go back to the history of the kind of debates and discussions that were being had even during the Abbas, it's very aggressive and very much geared to people with very strong opinions, and often using the state as a vehicle to actually shut down any opposing view. And obviously the problem with that is when you stifle that kind of debate, 1400 years ago, 1300 years ago, it has a knock-on effect now where people think they're following their mazahib or their scholar or their way of thinking or their group, and everybody else is wrong and they are right. It does cause major issues. The point I'm trying to make, and the question I have, which is really, Jazakallah khair, is a very, very great presentation. I think there's a lot of things to think about here. I think from my experience, the biggest problem, if you were to put these things into more of a generic issue, is often a total misunderstanding of the problems that we're even dealing with before we get to the solutions. So, you said people follow taqleed, usually taqleed, the difference between taqleed and establishing a precedent in the Western legal system. So they have a precedent, and then that can change by case law. Even they don't follow taqleed like that. They will say there's a principle behind the case law, and this new case has changed the principle. There's some new reality has happened, and the precedent needs to be looked at again. I'm not saying they're right, by the way. I'm just explaining their system. Okay, so that's not taqleed. What is taqleed is we say, well, we did this 1400 years ago or 1200 years ago, and we must do it now. And there's no real thinking as to why did Ibn Jawzi or someone say this 1200 years ago. What was the reason? His reality, his reasons. And this is a big problem because actually, misunderstanding of what it is we're dealing with is the first root cause, I would say. And it kind of touches upon 3 or 4 of your points. One is partialism. Yes, of course. If you think about partialism, it's a total misunderstanding. You're taking a part of something, and you're basically saying this is the full cause. And we just get into a infinite regression of issues from that point. I've had very interesting debates with people about crypto. I've seen scholars say this is haram, but they don't explain why, and the reasons they give us so wide off the mark. Again, I'm not saying crypto is halal or haram. I'm just saying if you look at the rationale, why are you saying it's haram, or why are you saying it's halal? It's totally, it's just a misunderstanding completely, right? So I think, the traps that you're talking about are brilliant, actually. And I would, the only thing I would say is, again, I know this is the objective of the course, but I think a holistic human side of understanding the problem is probably the first cause of what we need to be looking at before we even address solution. That's just what I would say on this topic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jelani. So this goes to some of the philosophical questions of epistemology and ontology, definitely. We have to really think where does this information or knowledge comes from, and who do we hold as authority in whatever knowledge or whatever the information that we talk about. And the limitations they can be they can be seen even within one textbook. So for example, just one quick example. This is a textbook on Islamic economics principles. Principles and analysis. This is published in 2019 in Malaysia. It's actually sponsored by Bank Negara, by Exim Bank, I mean, by all the financial institutions, and it is done by ISRA, Islamic Sharia Research Academy. I think it's one of the best textbooks on Islamic economics in its composition and its quality. But then it contains some of these limitations that we talk about. So it starts very nicely with the philosophical premises, but then it moves towards using just a normal mainstream economic approach to Islamic economics. So dividing this study into micro and macroeconomics, and within them, just following just normal economic mainstream textbooks. So you can just look it up. If you have a chance, maybe to buy it online, or if you go to Malaysia, you should buy this. I think it's overall the quality of the textbook is excellent. And it has a lot of interesting ideas and case studies. But then when it comes to books, let's say, for example, I have a book from 1992. This is Readings in Microeconomics. And this is a reverse technique. I would say it's a reverse technique. It's just completely using the normal, the mainstream economics, microeconomics, and structuring the whole book in this microeconomic thinking. So they talk about the diminishing returns. They talk about law of economics, scope and limitations. I mean, all the usual ideas on consumer behavior and the utilities, maximization of utility, and so on. So these are the market structure and resource allocation distribution. So this is another interesting book. It's a collection of articles, reading in microeconomics and Islamic perspective. Another book where when I was doing my Chartered Islamic Finance Professional in Malaysia at INSIF. INSIF is a postgraduate university in Malaysia, sponsored by Central Bank. And we had the range of subjects, and one of the subjects was applied Sharia in financial transactions. And this is actually the case of the complete like the taqlidi thought, and also the apologism. All right, so basically it shows all the Sharia recognized the contracts. So all the contracts which are like musharaka, mudaraba, and sales contracts, and all the types of contracts. So they give all the fiqhi definitions, fiqhi shurut, or the conditions. But then in the application section, it's sometimes it's a complete reversal. All right, so like bay'ina is one of the things, or bay't tawarruq, organized tawarruq. these are problematic stuff, but then they are used to structure financial products. Another interesting book is that you can find also in relation to apologism, is the book Islamic Bonds, Your Guide to Issuing, Structuring, and Investing Sukuk. So this is published by Euro Money, and the authors Nadif Adam and Abdul Qadir Thomas. So if you have access to this book, Islamic Bonds, Your Guide to Issuing, Structuring, and Investing in Sukuk. So that's another interesting resource for you to look up. And also some other books, let's say Islamic Finance, the Regulatory Challenge, Introduction to Islamic Finance Theory and Practice by Zamir Iqbal and Abbas Mirakhor. So all of them, they contain some of these limitations. As if you study this literature, and I'm sure Sister Ambrin, she's doing a lot of literature review these days, and she might also suggest some reading or some resources that contain some of these limitations.
Sure. I'm working on the list of recommended and required readings. Inshallah, it will be finished by the coming week, and we'll share with the participants for their perusal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the topic?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So I have a lot of questions. However, as it was pointed out, can consensus, is it necessary that consensus be agreement of one thing? As I see it, consensus can also be, acceptance of other ideas. This can also be known as consensus. Plus, just a quick comment. You can address my concern. You see, my brother, what was his name, Zilani Ghulam, and the sister Munita Sayyada, they were referring to, plurality in Western discourse. I would disagree with that. Not because, I'm not from West, no. If you read Western scholars who are considered as giants in West, for example, Herbert Marcuse or Charles Taylor, or Carl R. Truman. These are considered as the leading philosophers of the last century. Herbert Marcuse wrote a book. The title of the book is One Dimensionality. He has, charged Western thinking that, it is based on one dimension. So to say that, West is maybe in the social, what you call realm, or in the popular realm, you may have it. But, if you, critically analyze that, I think it's very difficult to say that you have plurality within the Western discourse. However, I just wanted to comment that you should, if you read Charles Taylor, Herbert Marcuse, and people like them, you will see that this is not the case. However, so my question is consensus only agreeing on one idea, or it can also mean that we accept other ideas?
Well, my very quick answer to this is, consensus. We are not looking at it as, as a part of usul al-fiqh, that ijma'. It's not that. But then, if we can build the consensus in the Muslim community that the Quran is the primary source. All right. So if we agree that the Quran is the primary source and the Sunnah is the secondary, and that we should refer, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also states in the Quran, that if you disagree, then you refer to the Quran. Then this is the type of consensus that I think we should aim at. And then and the next step, if we establish this consensus that we agree that the Quran is the shared book, it is revealed, and it is revealed for everyone. and all the different factions and groups and sects, they all accept it, whether Sunni or Shia or anyone. Then the next step is to discuss and maybe agree or disagree on the methodology. So the methodology is something that we are really pushing for people to at least to question. All right, this is where we say the Maqasid methodology has a critical orientation, and so we really want all the participants in this course and also in the Maqasid methodology course and in others to really consider and think critically about the philosophy or the methodologies that they arrive at certain decisions. And so what we say, and we concur with Prof. Jasser Ouda here in this methodology, is that we base on the idea of the Quran being the primary source, and that it contains all the answers, all the principles that we need. But then it's just the matter of how to uncover it, how to discover them. And in that, the methodology really plays a very important role, because you can because there are so many ways to interpret the Quran. The historical tafsir, there is technical, there is scientific tafsir, and also fiqhi tafsir. But then there is an interpretation that can be holistic, that can be interconnected within the Quran, and also connected with the Sunnah, and also with the world around us. But of course, Islam does allow debate and discussion in all those topics. So what we're trying to say that let us establish that the Quran is the primary source, that the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ayats for us to discover. But then let us see if this methodology works. So maybe some other methodology is also useful. So, for example, the idea just a few decades ago, it was the idea of Islamization of knowledge that really grew into the integration of knowledge today. So today, the IIIT, our colleagues at IIIT, they publish, they produce a lot of work in this area, in the area of integration of knowledge. And basically, this integration of knowledge and also the Maqasidi perspective, I think it is based on this combined reading that Sheikh Taha Jalal Al-Rayani, he talked about the two readings approach. So we try to read and understand the primary source of the Quran and also the world around us. So that's these are the ideas that I try to also try to practice in my classes as well.
Just to comment on like Brother Jelani's and several of you were talking about. So yes, it's very incredibly important to have and to give ourselves safe spaces where we speak and we do not doubt each other's iman, or and to be excommunicated and sent outside. That's number one, because I would hope that we're spending this time and effort and money to come here because we're seriously concerned about the status quo. So that is, yes, inshallah. Now, one thing we try to do at the Maqasid Institute is look at, here's at least some general principles to help us and think properly about the challenges that we are facing, like holism, connectivity, this, and then here are some major challenges. So at least if we agree on it, or if you tell us if you do not agree with any one of these points, these 5 limitations, and you can add to these limitations, you can subtract, that's not the issue, but at least when we start talking to each other, do we agree that the Quran is a major reference for us and taking the Quran holistically? Now, the challenge with the hadith, again, I think there was another comment. It's incredible challenge. It is the third rail, in anything we do, because we immediately jump to calling this person, for example, Qur'ani, which is really nonsensical because there's nothing such thing as Qur'ani. That's why in Maqasid Institute we say revelation, and by the revelation we mean Qur'an and Sunnah. Now, but the Sunnah is when everything in the Quran Kareem is exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended to be, and the exact sequence and the exact location, and we know exactly this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to communicate with us. The Sunnah, that does not apply to the Sunnah, even if it is authentically narrated and transmitted. It is not even exactly literal. Very little of the Sunnah is exactly 100% claimed to be literal. It is mostly by ma'na, by meaning. So there's the challenge. How do we deal with the Sunnah? So we say that the Sunnah needs to be in line with Al-Quran Kareem. It does not contradict the Quran Kareem, and that's a major challenge. So what does that really mean over time? So this is where we're trying to develop a fiqh of hadith, deep understanding of the hadith that helps us make proper use of the hadith. Let me give you one example of sometimes a debate over the hadith. And again, it is like partialistic understanding or apologism or this. This happened just recently. We were discussing with a group from Indonesia. The issue of, the travel of a woman with or without mahram. There is a very clear hadith on the issue. And then some people say, oh, well, that was happened a long time ago. It does not apply today. Well, is this really true? Or why don't we take this hadith instead of a black and white? If he's either allowed or not allowed, why don't we have a more nuanced, sophisticated understanding of the hadith? That is, whether it is a woman or a young man or a man. If you are going to a place where there is fitna, that is possible abuse, there is possible, lack of security, then you better not go alone. There is a deeper wisdom here that we should not just think in this black and white terms. Actually, just an example of this is that some scholars, after what happened with a major scholar in Europe, and who was seduced and he was whatever, or he fall into fahisha, and wal'iyadu billah. They said like, well, I need my mahram with me, and the mahram in this case is his wife or their wives. I'm not gonna go to any invitation, especially in Europe, without my wife with me. So that is just like a more holistic understanding of the hadith and of what the Quran Kareem is asking us to do, and not just I want to have black and white ruling. That it just really trivializes. That's why I say it trivializes what Islam is all about. It trivializes the deeper wisdom and the revelation that we should strive to, exemplify in the rulings. I'll give you one quick example, and that is very, very sensitive issue. So I have this paper here from the Fatwa Council, the European Council for Fatwa and Research. So this is in 2018, presented in Istanbul. By Sheikh Amin Al-Hazmi. So it's about investment loans from traditional banks. A fiqhi study about the conditions of Muslims in the West. So he's basically just trying to say like, look, we need a new thinking about this. Why? I mean, this blanket prohibition of any loans from traditional banks is probably warrants new thinking and consideration, because there are definitely situations where Muslims can benefit from loans. Not all loans are instantly destructive or bad or wrong. And then maybe there is a room for discussion. And based on that, I mean, I remember I was sitting and was next to me was hearing this presentation, and of course, many of it is resonating with me personally. But but the Sheikh Ali Hazmi is very scared of presenting this point of view because of the backlash he expects to come by just simply discussing the topic. Right next to me was this lady pharmacist from Paris, France, and she was discussing with me. I'm here for this discussion because I know how to run pharmacies. I know how to do this, and I want to expand. I want to have multiple pharmacies, and I wanted to also to use it to hire community members. And if you know the situation of Muslims and France in general and in Paris, there are really a massive amount of discrimination in hiring and economic opportunities. And this can be really incredibly helpful. And we get these subsidized loans that help, but we're not allowed to use any of it. And then at the point, I told him, look, in your situation, in your condition, and this, and giving this conversation that we just heard from a notable scholar, you may have a cause to go ahead and take these loans. Now, this is something I felt at the time that this is really what fulfills the objectives of Sharia. And still until now, I am incredibly I struggle with myself. Did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Should I have done that? Did I open a door to a riba that nobody should open at all? But then this is just, is it just my being scared of because the way we're all trained to be scared of anything related to riba. Now, however, what I realized is that in our community, in our society, the issue is not that there's no wealth. It's just that there are many people in the Muslim society have wealth, but because we do not practice this communal camaraderie or collaboration and cooperation, and we do not share that wealth, because we do not really trust even each other with this wealth, we are not able to finance a small business proposals like this sister's proposal. I mean, given the level, I mean, maybe opening another pharmacy, one location, maybe it's a $200, $300, $500,000. I mean, that's a small business, really. Is it really impossible? So are we trying to avoid the one holistic view here to these issues that can make things complicated or challenging? Is that because we are not willing to structure our society in a way that we really share our wealth and resources, then we have to justify riba in this. So it is a challenge, really, that I struggle with. But until we create a model where that makes this process possible, because I know from our community here in Nashville, Tennessee, there is lots of Muslim wealth, and a lot of people do not know what to do with it. But we did not develop a model to share that wealth with other members of the community who are, aspiring entrepreneurs. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to what is best. And I open that also to your discussion.
Brother Yasser, please.
Assalamu alaikum. It's just a follow on from Zaid's point, because I think this is a critical, maybe the critical challenge for us in this economic sphere, as well as in the Sharia more generally. And really, I think it's the reason why we're in this position is not due to any failure or weakness within the Sharia rule itself. Is actually the reality is the Muslims haven't been thinking and progressing and developing rules in order to live by for 100 years plus. So there's a big gap in our ability to understand and to link the rules with the reality, and we're feeling the results of that now. So, but I think part of how to, because there are a lot of challenges with doing this. But I think one of the things we need to do is just set some guidelines, some really clear guidelines around how that's done, because the real danger is in adopting criteria that are foreign to Islam as a basis for interpretation of Islam in the modern day. For example, taking benefit as a primary criteria for ruling. In Islam, there are higher values than benefit that needs to be taken into account. Or to give the example, Zaid, that you mentioned around the Mahram issue, taking gender equality as a basis for then interpreting Islamic texts, where in Islam we have a different view of that. We have defined roles for men and women, and therefore it doesn't make sense for us to do. I'm not saying that's what you're doing there, but I'm saying that's how it has been done. It has interpretation of Islamic rules around the roles of men and women have been done by people in the modern context, actually taking gender equality as the basis of that. And that, so I think it's I agree with that, because it's a challenge, but there's context where it's necessary, but where even basic principles like equity. I was thinking recently about this principle of equity, one of the economic principles that you outlined. Actually, what does equity mean today compared to, say, in the time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or in that kind of era, where actually people would have been treated with equity probably based upon their own realities, because there were many, there were Bedouins, there were city dwellers, there were country dwellers, there were people who had different realities that probably had different expectations about what economic rights and equity were. But actually in the modern world, there's concepts such as, standard of living and things like that, which are considered to be almost universal, right? And so actually equity is almost is a more of a universal concept now. So, we might have to even reinterpret how principles may have been understood in the past in terms of applying them today. So yeah, I mean, it's a real challenging issue, and I think that is going to be one of the things we will have to try and do is establish these guidelines and principles about how it's done, so that we don't veer off track and almost follow along the kind of more liberal people who have tried to do this and ended up going way off tangent, but yeah, anyway, that's just the comment I wanted to make on that channel.
Thank you very much, Brother Yasser. Sister Muniza.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I'm traveling now, so I hope the connection will stay. But what Dr. Zaid said, it really goes to the heart of my question, and I keep posing the same question again and again. If I contract a loan, if I am somebody who is giving someone a loan, I am the lender, and I say to them, I give you 50 grams of gold in year 1, and in year 3, you will give me 50 grams of gold back. Everybody will say that is a halal transaction because I'm not increasing the amount of gold, my capital is preserved and I get it back. But if I make that same transaction in a fiat currency, which is not pegged to a scarce resource like gold, then as a lender, I am constantly in loss. Because if I say £100 in year 1, give me back £100 in year 3, the purchasing power of that £100 in year 3 has declined. So therefore, I am in loss. That means that in a Muslim economy, without an interest element that accounts for an inflationary impact on my purchasing power, there is no incentive to lend. The lender will always be at loss. And I think that goes right to the heart of what Dr. Zaid was saying, that there is wealth in our community, but we don't know what to do with it because we can't lend it without suffering loss. And I think, again, and I just before I pass out, this is a question that really you shouldn't always end up. The answer that comes back to me quite often when I talk about this is you should just give it as charity. But for the person who is receiving that money, there is a psychological difference between charity and a loan. If I want to increase, now if I'm a borrower and I want to increase my business, I do not necessarily want to go out and get charity. I would rather contract a loan. But so this issue about lending in a fiat currency that is not pegged to a gold standard, and yet we are not allowed to account for inflationary aspects through some element of interest, which I feel is distinct from usury. I think this is a real issue, and I'd really like to get a succinct answer to this, because I've asked several people and I can't get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Dr. Zaid, you want to answer?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this is a big topic, and which is I have personally talked about and involved in this in debates on. So I feel like the Surah Al-Baqarah, the ayah, it says وَفَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ لَا تَظْلِمُونَ وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. So you have the principle of your capital, رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ رَأْسُ الْمَالِ, without transgressing on others or others transgressing against you. I do feel that is an indication that the purchasing power must be considered, whether it is a fiat currency, then use an inflation index, or if you want to benchmark it to a currency, to a precious metal, that you can also do that. Now there is a huge debate about this in the fuqaha, because again, this is where the taqlid comes in. It's like, because taqlid is like, but is the contract, are you handing over gold or are you handing over fiat currency? So and that they find this becomes that aqd is the aqd valid or fasid, because you're not really transacting gold. So I would love for this to be addressed again, not in the quick answer that I'm giving you right now, but it is a bigger issue here. So what if the gold value dropped down? Yes, maybe over 3 years, generally speaking, you might expect gold value to increase. What if it went down in value? What happens then? Because that has happened over 3 years, or at least over a few months. Gold value can go up and down. And then in terms of what currency, maybe it went down in one currency and went up in another currency. This depends on what's happening with that macroeconomy of that country. So the challenge here, Sister Shadrati, is that, again, what we're trying to say here in Maqasid Institute, we need to have a serious conversation, focus on this topic from a transdisciplinary and from a holistic way, point of view, to get to a proper way to address this challenge. But as of now, my opinion on this, or the opinion I share in Fatwa Council, is that you base it on you use an inflation index and make that as part of the contract. That is very important. If it is not mentioned in the contract, then people can just say this is exactly the sum that we are agreed on, and then we have to pay it back, or benchmark it to a precious metal that both parties agree on, and both parties need to understand what does that mean. So because that is where, if you're transacting with somebody who is not financially sophisticated, they may not understand maybe we intuitively understand that a gold, but do you understand that if you base it to gold, there is a possibility that the fiat currency, in terms of fiat currency, this can be up and down as a realistic outcome. Just needs to be spelled out. Wallahu alam. I wanted to give you one quick example about taqlid, and that is related to loans. So this actual case study that came to the Fiqh Council of North America, people, and related to your issue, like trying to help out. So the Islamic Trust organization, NATE, North America Islamic Trust, established a kind of investment account. Really, it is fi sabilillah investment account. Basically, if you have excess funds, put it in this trust account, and we will use it to help Islamic centers and just do all kind of things with it. And then when you need it, we'll give it back to you. So it is like a wadi'a, like a loan you're giving, and then you're entitled to it. So now the issue became, while you're parking your funds in that investment account, should you pay zakat on it or not? So this is not just the value, the inflation value, on money. We're not even discussing that. They're talking about now you have loaned your money for a good cause, and now you still on top of it, you have to pay 2.5% zakat. The way that it was answered by the Fiqh Council is again an example of taqlid. Well, this is the opinion of the fuqaha. Opinion 1, pay zakat on every single year. Opinion 2, you pay zakat in the last final year. When you receive the money, you pay zakat for 1 year. Opinion 3, you pay no zakat. So what opinion do we want to go with? We're going to go with the in-between opinion. You pay zakat on the last year. Now, notice the trust itself, NATE, North American Islamic Trust, says that, can we pay the zakat on their behalf? They said, well, no, you cannot pay zakat on their behalf because that would be riba, because you are giving them a benefit on their loan that they don't. So I said, so this case came to me and Sheikh Jasser, I told Sheikh Jasser, these people are trying to help with their wealth. This trust is saying that, look, we benefit a lot more than 2.5% a year. That's what we're willing to cover it for them. You have no idea how incredibly amazing that somebody is giving you money for free and you are benefiting it over multiple years. And you don't think this is enough to compensate for the zakah. And the zakah is you're trying to help the destitute. And these people are already helping the destitute. And they're already incurring a loss because they're not counting inflation loss on their zakah. So, okay, that if you only way that you want this to happen is through hila shartiyya, through literalism, okay, then you can consider that we are not promising any you, but we're going to give you a hadiyah, a gift at the end of every year or at the end of the loan. Oh, here is a gift, and oh, by the way, it is exactly 2.5%, and we're going to give you this gift, and we're going to turn around and take it back from you and use it to zakah. This is literalism and partialism and all these limitations. And my main issue here is that we are trivializing the Sharia by doing this trick that ends up, relieving this challenge. This because we don't want to come up and say, give a holistic view and serious conversation about what's happening. And we want to follow taqlid, or like the exact current legal process of thinking. And within connected to this, we want a quick comment to sister that put that reasoning. It's not based on human reasoning. How can you do it without human reasoning? Even taqlid, you cannot do it without human reasoning. So there is this made up contradiction that we developed. There is aql and naql. There is no such thing. There is no aql without naql, or no naql without aql. It is combined. It has always been combined, especially when you see that, when you say taqlid, and you see that in the one fiqh opinion, in the Hanafi opinion, there are like more than 10 opinions. Definitely people use their mind. And those who are following them, there you have to use human reasoning to choose which one of these 10 opinions within the Hanafi school of thought. So this is a made up contradiction. So the proper way to address this is, like you said, we need the proper methodology. And this is exactly what the maqasid methodology and what you're trying to here is like, we need to re-envision. We need Islamic scholarship and the proper methodology of truly preserving the wisdom and hikmah of the Quran Kareem, and truly honoring the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not come with these contradictions. The way that Dr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this is a major scholar from India who worked at the Dubai Islamic Bank. He said, at this point, I really think that all this justification for Islamic banking that I was part of, he was part of this, is really harming, because now Muslims are getting more sophisticated and asking us, what is the difference? So you're just simply playing with words and you're telling me this is the difference between Islam and non-Islam. So while we're saying that here, our Muslim are getting more sophisticated to say that is Islam is about these legal tricks, or there's something more serious aspect to it. So that's the biggest challenge. What I think also why many Muslims in the West specifically are turning to atheism. because they just then don't see this wisdom in Islam that we keep propagating, keep talking about. But in practice, once you start studying fiqh and fiqh opinion, you see all these contradictions that just they cannot accept it. Wallahu alam. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Zaid. Well, Shidrati Ali, please, you have your hand up.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me just lower my hand. So picking up sort of on the point that Dr. Shaida were talking about and yourself, Dr. Said. One thing about loans, interest, riba, and so on. I was reflecting on this during the Ramadan reflection assignment, and I'm wondering whether we need to think more wholesome, whether what is the position of in terms of the finance and economy, the position of loans versus investments and so on, whether is debt the where debt plays a part in the overall economy versus investments and other mechanisms, right? Because it seems like in today's world, given the fiat money and so on, you having debt, there is there's you will have this as been mentioned, loss if you don't take into account the interest or the inflation and so on. So again, I think we need to think more broadly on this, but would love to get people's thoughts on this.
If I may, very quickly, the idea of debt by itself is not a negative idea. It's something that we feel indebted, and even Deen, Islam as a Deen, is derived from the word Dain. I mean, Deen is and Dain, they are from the same root. So basically, as an idea in and of itself, it's not negative, and also the largest ayah or the largest ayah in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah is about the ayat al-dain. I mean, it is the name of this ayat al-dain. It's just the matter how you transact it, how you record it, how you deal with that. So as a tool, as an economic tool, I personally don't see any problem. And also, obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges it, recognizes it as a normal occurrence between the people. It's just that you need to put it in writing and have people witness it. So this is in terms of the debt as debt per se in the economy, and then the debt you can also use I mean in the current Islamic finance sphere. I mean, they do not use specifically the loans, for example, direct loans, but they use trade, and the economic effect is still the same. And you can structure murabaha, and it is a payment. What is that? A deferred payment sale, and the deferred payment sale is that. It's also that. So basically, it's how you record it, how you manage it, and whether this debt is whether you expect any end return for it. How you treat that debt. If you give money as a loan, do you treat it as a commodity or as any other asset that can bring returns? Or it's not like any other commodity, that it should not be rented, it should not be given for growth or for riba, for riba. So basically, it's about how you manage, how you handle the idea of that. And of course, even by using trade, you can still end up in debt. So this is where we need to relook at the Quran. Do we really outrightly say that debt is a bad thing, and then loan we just have to completely deny it, or not practicing it, or we just have some other understanding, or maybe more holistic understanding of it, and practice it. Dr. Zaid, if you want to add, but there is Mahdi.
No, I'm good. I'll write my comment, and I want Dr. Mahdi to jump in.
Yeah, Dr. Mahdi, please.
Do you hear me well?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'm outside. So, I agree with you, Dr. Idris here. I think there are many ways to deal with inflation and mechanism in economics to be innovative in that sense. I'm actually kind of the other side, where I think it's, at least in the US, it's kind of shameful that there is no institution that provide loans with no interest. When I see our cousins, institutions like the Jewish one, in every single city in the US, you would find Jewish banks that offer loans for Jewish community with no interest rate. And I haven't seen any Islamic bank in the US that does this interest-free loan. And so I think it's kind of problematic, and it's just a symptom of what Muslims are trying to do in the Western societies, where we're just trying to match, trying to do some halal mortgages and things like that based on the Western transaction. But I just have a broader question here about the intent of the class here. We've been talking some very particular situations, and I'm more worried about not going back to the web of meetings with Maqasid. What are the different concepts are we trying to work on in economics? And so it would be good if you could settle down and try to find. I don't think there are many concepts in economics that are keys that control to the different theories here. But as we are all trying to use and strive towards this methodology here, I think it would be a good exercise for all of us just to ponder about what are the main economic agents, or the main economic concept that we want to rely on, or where we want to base our theory on before to do any type of modeling. And at least if we can, reconsider what does that mean to be a consumer producer, even in light, and I'm going to teach on that, even in light on the more recent macro research, the whole field of micro theory have been oriented toward microeconomics. So you don't even at the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, all the theoretical model is done on micro theory. So if you don't have a good definition of what are the principal economic agents from a micro perspective, I think we're gonna go to some type of a failure where it's everything rely at the micro scale, which is also true in Islam, where study to work at the individual level before going toward the whole community here. So again, just to finish on this thought here, going back to the web of meaning, different concepts, values, and universal laws, groups, and so on and so forth, at the micro level in economics, it helps us to have a better foundation for what do we want to do with this economics. Inshallah.
Yeah, thank you.
And then-
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahdi. Well, this is some of the concepts. Of course, we'll have to talk about them in the upcoming modules, in upcoming sessions. So in the future, when we discuss the methodology itself, and where we discuss the idea of the concepts in the Quran and Sunnah that are related with the economy, with the economic phenomena. I guess this is where we'll have to discuss it a little bit more, and we will touch on that definitely, inshallah.
And one of the objectives of this course is, can we set some of the big questions and get into the deep, slow thinking on them, set a research agenda that we can take it one by one and have a deep dive into them بعونه تعالى.
Well, we are past the hour. I mean, if do you have any comments or questions? We can. I think we can even stop the recording now, so we have completed the class. But then, if you still have anything else to ask or comment on, maybe for another few.